So these are our musicals starting in 1980 and continuing until last year. There have been 39 of them, 34 by Alpha and 5 by Ian. The original play was The Prince and the Pauper, which Alpha got inspired to do because she had a small choir of about 24 kids, including twins, identical twins. So she thought it would be great fun to have them be the Prince and the Pauper. It was a very successful show, and we heard about it through one of the girls in it was my daughter Lakshmi's friend at school, and persuaded Lakshmi to come see Christmas at First Church. So we did, and Lakshmi fell in love with the choir and decided to join it. The only problem was I was expecting a baby right about then. So the Goy teens transported her to choir for a couple of months. She joined, loved it, and then she was in Hms Pinafore along with her little brother. So anyway, these musicals were all chosen because the first requirement was good music. The second requirement was they had to have enough parts, and girls often played boys' parts. Once a boy played a girl's part, which was Yenta in Fiddler on the Roof. The third thing is it had to be okay for kids, meaning no kissing, because middle school kids who are our leads, it's hard to get them closer than 3 feet from a boy and a girl together. So kissing is really out of the question. It's hard enough to get them to hold hands. And then what can they learn from it? Is there anything they can learn from it? That's not every show. Some shows are just pure fun. The last and most important rule is that it must include everyone in the choir without exception, but also everyone in it has to be in the choir without exception. So with those requirements, the Gilbert and Sullivan ones fit pretty well. They were designed by people who are also stage theater owners, so they're practical. They don't have too many costumes. They have only 2 sets, and they're set between 1890 and 1900, and so the kids can learn a lot of that period. So these were our first shows, and these were the rest, down to Newsies, which was only a couple of years ago. Since then, of course, because of COVID, we haven't had a show. Our original shows were in the old parish hall, and this was our stage. It was tiny. The big advantage to it was that it was very high and everybody could see everything. The disadvantage to it was that it had a ceiling of acoustical tiles, which swallowed all the noise from the stage. So anything to be heard had to be sung from the front, facing straight out to the audience, which was Alpha's preferred way anyway. There was also no way to cross from side to stage to the wings on the other side. So people had to come down, go around, but the piano was in the way. So we had to schedule acts and which wings kids waited in and all of that very carefully. So that became an issue of traffic control. In the first show, the first 2 shows, the spotlight was a big flashlight. Harry Radford then gave Alpha a proper spotlight. And eventually he got the ceiling removed, which made things hugely better. Hms Pinafore was the second show and my first one. Madeline Emerson was in charge of costumes and Dinah Lane was helping Alpha with the show. I only made Lakshmi's costume, which was Little Buttercup. Madeline made all of these sailor collars, which have been useful ever since. Somebody got the hats from Chadwick's. It was all fairly informal. Madeline Emerson went on for many shows to make all the uniforms. And she was the one who taught me how to make policemen's uniforms out of blue blazers bought at the Belmont Hill School rummage sale. It worked wonderfully, and we have a beautiful collection of policemen's uniforms, which we've used many times. One of the best things that developed of doing shows over so many years was watching little kids grow up. The little girl in pink is Natalie Jones, age 5. And this is Natalie Jones, grade 8, being Maria in The Sound of Music. She had all those years to learn how to do it right. This is my son Anand as a midshipmite in that first Pinafore. And that's him as Tevye in Fiddler, years later, coming back in the 9th grade and happy to yell at Cynthia, who was a good friend of his. After choosing the show, there's a lot of planning that needs to happen. You have to plan sets, scenes, colors, so many things. And after it's cast, the director needs to concentrate on the music and that whole side of things. So other things tend to get delegated. Now, when we did Gondoliers, when I did it with Ian, we decided that the colors should be basically the colors of the Italian flag. So there's a lot of red, white, and green. On the other hand, Sound of Music, the Magic Flute was done in turquoise and gold, including the set, and the backdrop was simple, just blue, because the set was elaborate. So all of these variations were possible. The next thing to research at the very beginning, before rehearsals really got underway, was the history, any relevant history. These were costumes relevant to Fiddler on the Roof. And Lakshmi and I made a display, which we put up on the bulletin board in the hallway so that kids could learn from these displays. Then in The Sound of Music, there is an abrupt change from free Austria to Austria under the Germans. The Anschluss was in the movie, The Sound of Music. It's not in the play. It's just assumed that everybody knew about it. So we put it in so that the kids would learn about it and the intensity of it. But we were warned that we could only have this horrible symbol on for less than 60 seconds. So we had the boys march in, yank down the Austrian flag, and march right across it with this flag and off. Finished. This happened on with the show. Then in the South Pacific, we decided that the kids needed to learn all about the war. We put up maps. We explained the progress of the war. We told them about code talkers who were Navajo Indians. We gave her a Navajo name as a code talker. We talked about what would have been on the radio in those days, put up pictures of the various singers who were popular. And then an older girl who wanted to come back just for a small part, got to be one of those singers entertaining the troops like Bob Hope used to do. Also, doing especially Gilbert and Sullivan's, the kids needed vocabulary. So for the first month, I would collect the words they had to ask what the meanings were, or I'd ask them what meanings were and they didn't know. And then we'd make signs and we'd assign 3 of the girls who clearly needed more part to come out at intermission in an entr'acte and explain the vocabulary, which was great fun. And then there was the issue of dealing with if a show had a message or had an issue. South Pacific had the issue of race and racism. And the parts of the lieutenant and Leah were supposed to be people of opposite race. So with our lieutenant who looked Almquist, we cast him against a girl who was Indonesian, and they did a beautiful job. But our other lieutenant was Charles Yee. So we cast him against 2 very European looking girls. This is Bloody Mary and this is Liat. Dressed them differently as Hawaiian Polynesians. and thus preserved the difference and distinction, which led to a fight at the time of makeup, because some people wanted to make everybody up as East Asian, and I said nothing doing. Liat and her mother had to look different from Charles, completely different, and I won. Then there, and also in casting from the very beginning and developing the scenes and all of that, we have to deal with special needs, because remember, every single member of the choir has to be in the show. So Katie Cudmore, who was attached to oxygen at all times, was assigned to a best friend who carried her oxygen in a basket at all times, so Katie could participate in the songs and dances. And her friend was right with her. And that worked really beautifully. There were others. There was Ronan in Shrek, who was in a wheelchair. And there was a wonderful little boy whose name I blocked, who was in a walker in the first Pirates of Penzance. And so he had a little pirate's flag attached to his walker, and we had a special place in the wings because he couldn't handle stairs, and everybody loved it. Then we needed to develop with situations, we head them off. People that we knew might give issues, we assigned them roles so that it wouldn't be a problem. There was a wonderful boy for several years named Tyson. And Tyson, we put into uniform early and gave him a job as an officer, which made him behave like an officer, which was wonderful. Then there were problems that developed in the course of rehearsals. There's a wonderful scene in Fiddler where Tevye and Laser Wolf are discussing the marriage of his eldest daughter. Now there's a lot of other people on stage, and they all have to act on stage. They all have to remember that the audience is watching their every move, but they don't have lines, so they tend to think that it doesn't matter. Older kids are all right. These Russians were just pretending to get mildly drunk. But these younger kids were offstage, what I called a puppy pile. We put too many little boys together and they're all happily on the floor. So I had a parent design a chess game that was halfway through and glued the pieces down, gave it to the boys, and offered a candy bar to the first boy who figured out what the next move should be. Kept them busy the whole time. It was wonderful. One of them finally did win the candy bar. He was very proud of himself. Then there's always the issue of what to do when you're double casting, which we double cast starting with the first Pinafore, because that's a way to give more people good parts. So when we had somebody who was double cast, what to do with them on their off nights? By the time we did Oliver, we had 2 nights on and 2 nights off. So with all the leads, you give them something else to do. And this is great if you have a bit part that needs a fantastic voice. So our leads in Oliver all became the voices in that beautiful song, Who Will Buy This Beautiful Morning? And so this is, I think she sang Strawberries Ripe, Strawberries Ripe. And sometimes leads who were real leads, doubled leads, were only in 1 act. The Pharaoh in Joseph is only in Act 2. So in Act 1, he was an Ishmaelite. These are all the people who doubled in as Ishmaelites who are only in 1 scene, and they had a riotously good time. So this was the curtain call with them all little bits of Ishmaelite costumes over their other costumes. And that, by the way, on the right-hand side of the picture is our camel. Judy Love made us a camel, and with 1 kid inside, and he's a wonderful camel. And we've used him also in Godspell. So back to the stage, that little stage with the awful ceiling. Somebody had to design and do sets. And at the beginning, it was up through Oz, pretty much just parent volunteers. But Alpha forgot to assign a volunteer to do the set for the wizard's throne room. So it was done the week of dress rehearsals with Christmas paper and done pretty much overnight by Lakshmi and me. Those things happened. On the other hand, the very first Sound of Music had a magnificent backdrop painted on old sheets by an artist. Such a beautiful job. We've used it ever since. But when we moved to the new parish hall, the stage was 2.5 feet taller. We needed to put the backdrop up. So we stitched fabric across the bottom, and this enterprising parent painted a bit down so that we could use it. And see, it looks like there's a lake there. It's a perfectly good alpine scene. And this is off the terrace of the Von Trapp house. So we use things over and over. Other mistakes that we made were we had a beautiful backdrop for Fiddler on the Roof that somebody painted just really nicely. And we needed a way to put the fiddler up for the opening scene. So we painted a fence to put in front of the backdrop and then forgot to take it down. So next Fiddler, we didn't make that mistake. The backdrop was up all the time. We did something else with the fiddler and the backdrop was much more visible. It was the same backdrop rehabbed for this play. We got more complicated as years went on. This was the first Fiddler, Golday's Kitchen. This is the second Fiddler, Golday's Kitchen. And some of the backdrops were truly elaborate. This was from Music Man, painted just wonderfully. And we've kept all of the elaborate backdrops so that we can use them again. Then there's the choreography. Choreography is terribly important. Sometimes we needed a choreographer. At first, a woman named Brenda Winston volunteered, but then a parent named Gail Grove took over and did a wonderful job. Then her daughter graduated and we started hiring choreographers because it's a very distinguishable, easy to farm out job. And there are choreographers around very happy to be hired for things like this. This, by the way, is John Widmer with a bevy of girls who were all in love with him anyway. So that was a wonderful show to put on that way. He was playing Birdie. This is Bye Bye Birdie. This was also choreographed and had a set that was painted by one of the kids. That was painted by Ann Warner's son, and he did a beautiful job. Sometimes we didn't need a choreographer. This scene was choreographed by Lakshmi. It's the library scene from the Music Man, and that's Bridget Kersey being the Music Man, being Howard Hill, because she wanted a good part, and best parts were male. This also shows some of the things we did to teach kids history. Music Man is set in 1912, which was the year that Arizona and New Mexico joined the United States, and the year the Titanic went down. So the firewall was an explanation of the Titanic. Throughout all of this, consultation was continuous and most important. For several years, Lakshmi was stage manager and assistant director, and everything got discussed. And this is crucial. And then there were the costumes, which were my special love. After I'd managed to delegate all of the other backstage traffic stuff. So costumes, they have to be informative and transformative. Informative as to the time and place. They also are transformative because kids act differently when they're in costume. As I said with Tyson, it really transforms their behavior. So we have to decide early on what's needed, what sort of things we need, who's going to change costumes. Are there actors who need multiple costumes because they're multiple people, or because multiple costumes because they have to change in the course of the story? So when you're costuming, first you get a general idea of what's needed, then you measure all the kids, And you make yourself very careful charts showing which kid is which part in which scene and where the changes have to happen. And then you start to dress them. Now, the only reason I'm able to do these shows at all is that I have a collection, which has been building ever since the mid-'80s. I co-opted the space over the back hall behind the stage in the new parish hall. And first I had some shelves built in, and then Ian had some more shelves built in. And so all of the collection is there. In case you're wondering what the pink scene is, that's the head of our dragon from Shrek, which is the most wonderful dragon and was made by Heather Kay and Diane Lopez over the summer before Shrek happened. And another good thing that happened in Shrek was that Riley's grandmother from the Carolinas volunteered to sew, and she sewed all the Farquaad dancers' skirts and a few other things. It was magnificent. A lot of costumes come out of the collection and then are stored afterwards, either in sets, like sets of vests or sets of red circular skirts or sets of turquoise skirts or whatever, or by show. There are many, many boxes that say Fiddler or Gondoliers or Shrek or whatever the show is. And we have quite a number of shows stored up there. Some things are just like blouses are stored on hangers and short racks that were made deliberately to have multiple layers. And some things are also used for other things that regularly happen in the church, like Christmas. And so these things that were all used for Joseph are also all used for the nativity pageant, Christmas Eve. Now, as I said before, some sets were started by Madeline in the first shows. This is from Pirates of Penzance, all the policemen, and they've been used ever since. These are from Oliver, same costumes. The sailor collars that she made first for Pinafore, then were used in Pirates of Penzance on the girls, then were used in The Sound of Music for the uniforms the children wear at the beginning of the show when they're all marching around alike. And that's Bridget Kersey who's telling Maria that she's 5 years old. Sailor collars again on the mayor's wife's friends in Music Man while preparing for their Grecian urn thing at the fair. And there was another set made for that show that's wonderful of barbershop quartet vests. And some sets that were put together have never been used except for one show. These were all Canaanite kids from Joseph. And these are all, not all, about 2/3 of them are real Middle Eastern clothes that I either owned or borrowed from all over the place. And then some of them were made to fill in the line. These were made for gondoliers and among other things show the necessity of dress rehearsals because one of those aprons had to be shortened. This shows those vests again. Somebody didn't fit, so we made a new one, as much like as possible. And another wonderful volunteer made all of those velvet dresses for the little girls who were Venetian noblewomen. Here's another costume that I made purely for one show. This is the Dreamcoat from Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. I bought the fabric in Bombay, designed it for a high school play, and then used it in our play, carefully keeping ownership so that I could use it wherever I wanted. Notice also, that's one of the dresses that shows up on Mary at Christmas. Another spectacular one-off costume was Fruma-Sarah from Fiddler on the Roof. There, Alpha got the wonderful idea of getting a black light, which picked up white. And so she was dressed in fabrics that responded to black light. And all of the people put on, in the villagers in that scene, put on white gloves. which were also picked up by the black light, and it was very spooky, like a bunch of ghosts. And one of the favorite collections of all time is the goats, made for Joseph, used in The Sound of Music for the Little Goat Herd song. I think originally some of them were made for the first Sound of Music. And we just love using them. And there are many kids who remember being goats and then turning into leads 7 or 8 years later. Another special costume that I made was the wings that are used every Christmas. They were made for Joseph. There's a scene with the brothers that use angel wings. And angel wings. Now, there's also props, which is another delegatable job. And there are usually wonderful parents who can be asked to make props for this or that or the other scene. People who don't like costumes but are perfectly happy to make other stuff. So this is from Joseph. This is the wheat that thrived in some years and wilted in the next years. Also, it was a parent who made those, who had those T-shirts made by a shop that did that sort of thing for these younger kids whose part in Joseph was kind of like a Greek chorus, showing up with props and singing and asking all of the right questions at the right times. This is one more set of costumes that was made for Sound of Music in the first place. But here I want to talk about other things that happen backstage, and that is the stage manager and crew, which I don't have good pictures of because it's dark back there. And my first assistant stage manager was my daughter Lakshmi, who was also the Mother Abbess on one night. And then he was the wizard in Wizard of Oz, came back in the 10th grade. The wizard only went on in one scene at the end. I mean, visibly on. So the rest of the time he was stage manager, and that worked really well. The stage manager hopefully is competent enough to take over the running of the stage so that I don't have to be backstage during rehearsals or run. It's frequently happened. We've had some great ones over the years. Melanie Silva springs to mind. Marin Powers was absolutely wonderful. Recently, Mariko Findel not only did a great job, but brought the backstage crew into the 21st century by making them all put the same apps on their phones so that they could text each other in real time from different parts of the dark backstage, which worked beautifully. So hopefully we'll do that forever forward. Now, another thing about costumes is that not only are you dealing with lots of costumes for different shows and different people, but sometimes you have a show like The Sound of Music where the 7 Von Trapp children have 7 costumes each. That's 49 costumes right there. We double cast. So that is 98 costumes. And Maria has 8 costumes. So our last Sound of Music had 231 costumes for, I think it was 96 kids. Because mercifully, there are a few who wear the same costume throughout. Now that takes a lot of organization backstage too, which usually involves dressers for the little kids. And this is Bridget Kersey again, as Gretel at rehearsal in an apron that had to be shortened. She decided halfway through the first show that she was tired of changing her costume and she wasn't going on. But her dresser said, "You're in a slip, that's decent, you're going on costume or not. So your choice is not going on or not, it's do you put the costume on or not?" She put the costume on and went on. And then the next performance, she told her captain father that she didn't feel like going out, and he picked her up by the back of her dress like a kitten, carried her out and dropped her on the stage, which worked. She's become a semi-professional musician. She grew up through all of the shows, became the Music Man in her last show, and has been absolutely wonderful. She got over some of her moments when she was 5. The Sound of Music has dirndls, it has the uniforms, it has party dresses, which is from the flip out change. It has then the wedding clothes, which I use dirndls with wreaths and dress them up a bit, and the boys put on jackets. It's a complicated show, but it's wonderful to do. Then, separate question, sometimes you have two different people cast in the same part in the same show that are so different size and shape they can't share anything. So in our second Pinafore, or maybe it was the third one, I'm losing track, this is cousin Hebe in the blue turquoise dress. And this was our other cousin Hebe in the lavender dress, which has been wonderfully useful in many other shows, including Gondoliers. Recently, you might remember the Countess wearing that dress. And the princess is wearing what we otherwise call the Glinda dress from the Wizard of Oz. Sometimes I also do shows for other schools. I've done a number of shows for Willowville School in Sudbury, which is a special needs school. And they did the Wizard of Oz, and I designed a witch for them, which then was painted by one of the girls into a portrait that was very much like a Picasso portrait of a countess, but picked up the colors, the costumes reflected. Then we used the same costume for our wizard when Ian did it just recently. And then it came on again in Shrek, which had two kinds of costumes. One was a whole bunch of fairy tale people out of the collection, many of whom got to pick who they wanted to be. And some didn't, because we had to have a set of 3 bears and a set of 3 little pigs. So they were built in. And there was Pinocchio, who was an important part. And this was the other side of Shrek, which was a set that was made by this wonderful grandmother, Riley's grandmother from the Carolinas, plus Farquaad, which is a one-off, which can only be used for Farquaad and Shrek, which I had a good time making. He walks around on knee pads. He has false little legs. He's supposed to be extra short. Sometimes we also borrowed from outside. My daughter Lakshmi was involved with Revels. So from Revels, she borrowed a dragon that we could use in the magic flute. This was the dragon in rehearsal. Not everybody was wearing dark pants yet in dress rehearsal. They learned. The dragon tail had a wonderful time. And this is what the dragon looked like going off stage with the Queen of Night watching it leave. That dress, the Queen of Night's dress, was made by a wonderful parent, although not sewing for her own child. Her daughter played Pamina, double cast against Mariko, and her mom volunteered to make the Queen of Night's dress, designed it, made it, then went on to make the dresses of all her attendants, and then told me she had learned to sew just the summer before from YouTube. She did an exquisite job. So finally, we come down to the show, and there is a whole bunch of details. There's makeup, there's dressing rooms, there's final organization, there's hopefully a stage manager and stage crew that can do everything, that they've rehearsed everything. And then the show, at dress rehearsals, there are 2 dress rehearsals for each cast. One is a preliminary dress rehearsal where we find out all kinds of things like aprons that are too long or too short, or dresses that clash with the dress next to it, so I have to change something. That has happened, etc. And kids who said, I didn't know I have to have black tights, or kids who show up in sneakers and I said, I've been telling you for 2 months to get black shoes. They said, sorry, I forgot. Anyway, prelim dress takes care of that. Then on dress rehearsal, we apply makeup and try to have a continuous run without stopping for anything. And then there's the show itself. Pit band. This is the pit band in the old hall where Alpha jammed the piano against the stage left, and anybody who wanted to go up onto the stage from down there had to wait down there between scenes or crawl under the piano to get there, which was dramatic. And the pit band was right there, and Richard Kersey, here with his back to us, did the synthesizer and also controlled the sound. And this was all set up for South Pacific. Alpha always dressed like somebody in the show, so she's dressed like a sailor. Then the show happened, and then there was curtain calls, where flowers were given and so forth and so on. And there's our Charles D. and his Liat again, and all kinds of people that I'm sure you will recognize. And that's not the end of the show. The end of the show, after that, everything has to be collected, laundered, sorted, and put away, which is a mammoth job, which sometimes drags on because, after all, our shows end a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. And then there are lots of people who say, oh, I can do a load of laundry for you, but I'll give it back after Thanksgiving. So getting everything back in its proper place is a job that's always too much for me, and I need to arrange a lot more help for that. Usually I've been arranging so many other things, I kind of forget that until I'm forcibly reminded with bags of laundry after the show. So that is my last picture. But years ago, my daughter Lakshmi wrote a piece about Joseph, which I'd like to read to you. And it mirrors my sentiments exactly. So this is really not just from her, it's from both of us. Behind the scenes of Joseph, November 2002. Many of us saw the amazing set of 4 shows of Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, myself included. For the first time ever, neither Sandy nor I spent the show backstage, thanks to our incredible stage crew of Joelle Topaski, Ann Winston, Anna Winston, and Lauren Bell, led by stage manager Melanie Silvas. Which is not to say that things didn't happen, of course they did. Life in theater is delightfully unpredictable in spite of scripts and rehearsals. Our first 3 shows on Thursday through Saturday went so smoothly that we almost couldn't believe it. Our actors were terrific, the ensembles came together, the shows had energy, lighting was perfect, costumes were gorgeous, the band was great, audiences were enthusiastic, and there were no glitches other than the microphones trying to sing along with the chorus. And then came Sunday. Remember the Warrington air pressure? We got the end of the weather system that wreaked havoc in the Midwest. Our church's electrical system must have felt it, for all the lights suddenly went out during intermission, with people all over the building. Finding flashlights, the hunt for the right fuse box, sending out for a replacement fuse, determining that the stage and parish hall lights worked, applying Egyptian eye makeup to several dancers in the dark, and on with the show. After Act 2 was underway, while the junior choir groups were singing in front of the curtain in their little entr'actes, we discovered that Pharaoh's cordless handheld microphone was missing, and he was due to go on in 5 minutes. We searched everywhere, no luck. Crawling through the audience to notify Richard Kersey was a new experience. Richard controlled the microphone output, as well as playing the synthesizer. Finally, Pharaoh went out wearing the small mic or lavalier we had used for the angel and carrying a dead cordless mic as a prop. Then, during Pharaoh's Elvis-style dancing, the mic box fell off the costume. 3 cheers to Sunday's Pharaoh, Lily Cudmore, for her gracious handling of the nerve-wracking situation. On Monday, we discovered that someone had taken the usual microphone up to the sanctuary for the Sunday service, locked it into the closet up there, and left us a note, which we all missed. Near the end of Act 2, the camel's glass eyeballs fell out and were taped in just in time for the curtain calls. Our cast, I was impressed. Each person worked hard at their individual characters. 35 actors portrayed 58 roles, and they worked hard at being part of an ensemble. Special praise goes to the brothers, 11 actors in the 5th through 9th grades, who overcame age, gender, and other differences to create a dynamic and energetic team of unique siblings, a seeming paradox. Congratulations, brothers. Another thing that made our shows great were the good older actors in supporting roles. A good show must have a strong star or stars, and we did, magnificently so. Without them, it's a failure. But what then makes a show great are the details and the characters which surround the stars. It is such a joy to work with and direct our kids, even with all the difficulties. I create a vision and then work with everyone to include their ideas and see it come to life. I see the big picture and the small details. I work with people from all over the church. I get the backstage and the audience perspectives, and I get to do all of the parts, giving each actor ideas and then watching them become something even greater and better. Thank you all. So that's what I have to say, and I'm very happy to have any questions from anybody. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, this is wonderful, Sandy.
Yes, thank you.
Sandy, what was the size of the cast for the first shows? Just give us perspective of, you know, where the program grew.
Oh, the first show was Prince and the Pauper, which I think had 24 kids. The second show was I can't even talk. Hms Pinafore, which had about 35 kids, which is up significantly in 1 year. They grew every year after that until the biggest one was the second fiddler, which was, I think, 115. This fiddler, let's see, this fiddler, Avery's fiddler, had 115 kids in it. And that was very difficult to handle on that little stage. And it's shrunk back after that to in the 90s. And for many years, Alpha had a bigger junior choir, which ranged from 50 to 60, and a cast which was reliably around 35 of big kids. That's 5th grades and up. And then recently, the junior choir has shrunk. That's partly demographics in the church. So there we are.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to the list. Yes? Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's just amazing from 24 to 115. That's
Yes.
pretty incredible.
You've given me a real appreciation of the musicals. You're telling us about kind of educating the kids about the period it's set in. It feels like you've done such an amazing job, and I just want to say that now I really get the importance of the musicals.
Mm-hmm. It not only teaches them something about the period of the show, about Gilbert and Sullivan being a farce, and so therefore some of, okay, they're full of bad jokes. Magic Flute was a wonderful growing experience because a lot of the kids noticed that Magic Flute has plots very much like Gilbert and Sullivan, and that's because Sullivan was a fan of the Magic Flute. He was deliberately writing his shows to be as close to the Magic Flute as he could get. So, and then for instance, in Sound of Music, we went into the Illuminati and all of that and designed the set with the eye and little symbols on the soldiers. So they learned a lot, or they could learn a lot. The best, they didn't all learn a lot. The best story on learning something was in South Pacific when I was explaining the course of the war, and Bridget Kersey, who at that point was in, I think, 6th grade, piped up and said, "Oh, do you mean that that's the Holocaust War?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh," and I said, "That's why it was called World War." She said, "That makes sense." Point made.
Mm.
This was all borrowed choir robes, by the way.
What were some of the shows you particularly enjoyed working on?
Well, my favorites were South Pacific and Fiddler on the Roof and Sound of Music, I think, and Joseph. I really got into Joseph. And then, of course, the Magic Flute was a complete challenge in a new way because Mozart's music is very difficult. But that was more a headache for the director and the music people. I've never done anything on the music side. I handle everything else backstage.
Sandy, can you talk about, we're so used to technology now, but, in the day, everything was, handwritten things. We weren't emailing or having spreadsheets or all those things. So, quite a production, how technology has enabled, even as you say, from the texting, but even signups for things or typing lists, delegating all that.
And sometimes I was behind the times, so things would be delegated that I didn't even know how to do, which was great. The primary shows, the first shows by Alpha, were all organized by her, and most of you can probably remember how much she was on the telephone, and she made telephone trees and everything went out that way and by notices, and quite a number of us had the experience of being told to do something, and then by the time we got to it, the notices were already out. Alpha was very fast about these things and very thorough, so we got used to really good communication from her. Sometimes too much communication, but that's all right. It really, really helped. Emails came in slowly, spreadsheets came in slowly. Kate Searle was wonderful about introducing some of those things to the organization of everybody, all the volunteers, etc. And fortunately, that's something I never had to do. I couldn't possibly have managed. It was hard enough to manage the costumes, and other people managed other stuff. You remind me that another thing I wanted to mention was that there were production roles which are crucial that we only learned about by experience. One was to have a prompter down front nearby. Diane Lopez has been that for years, and it has made things so much better. It's a low-tech, crucial job. Then there were the people like Kate Searle and you and other people who did all of the running around, coordinating who was where when during rehearsals and performance. And Gabrielle Garcina Barbro was, I think, for I don't know how many years, in charge of the junior choir groups and getting them on and off the stage at the right times. Another crucial job, which she also, Diane Lopez was there. And between the two of them, they've managed the junior choir for the last, I don't know, 10 years. I forget when. We couldn't do shows without them or without people in those roles. Because I need to, after I've gotten everything rolling, be the firefighter to take care of emergencies. And that's been my role. After everything is rolling, after things have been made and designed and assigned and all that good stuff, I need to be able to cope with curveballs.
When did the videography come into the first videos that were actually officially done? When did Ed and Beer start that?
The first video was Iolanthe, which was only show number 4. My husband had a new video camera, which he did Iolanthe and made VHS copies at home and distributed them, and that was quite a job. And then we were gone for the year of the Mikado. And so other people moved in. Oh, no, that was before us. Iolanthe, Sound of Music, Wizard of Oz. He did it for a while, and then Ed Imbier took over, and then Charles Yee took over. And by the time of Charles Yee, it became compact discs, and so forth and so on. And now it's under Ian is morphing again as the technology changes. And unfortunately, our original tape of Iolanthe has gotten lost. And of course, a lot of the rest of the VHS tapes are unreadable. We can still read our CDs, I mean DVDs, but we'll have to get them transferred or something. I don't know what to do with VHS. All of these are VHS. So it was early on. Recently, it's going online, so they don't make DVDs anymore.
So is there a library for these DVDs and VHS tapes?
I hope so. Ian
Oh.
has it, I hope. Alpha had it. I think they're all in the music office.
There,
I don't know.
there is
There's-
technology to transfer from a VHS to a DVD.
I know, it's expensive.
Oh, I have my son,
Or
so
time-consuming. Some people can do it themselves.
yeah. I wish we could give you a bouquet of flowers, Sandy. Really. Thank you so much. It's like a Valentine.
Well, thank you. It was really good for me to put this together because it's very easy to lose institutional memory. And especially now that we had this break with COVID, all our teams are falling apart. And we're going to have to, the next time we do a show, we're going to have to reconstruct a lot, because doing this without a big team, without a prompter, without a junior choir shepherd, without a doorkeeper, without a really good stage manager, without a really good stage crew, is impossible.
Of
So
course.
that has to be done. And a crew to put things away, which I sometimes get to organize. And at this stage, with knees like mine, I can't do it all myself anymore. So I'm going to have to organize it.
Really glad this was recorded, not just so people can see it now, but it's a way of having it become part of the church history that can be viewed in the future. So
Yes,
thank you for that too.
that will be useful.
And Mark recorded it. And maybe, how can you give us a link to that, Mark? Can you?
The link will be available in a week or so. It records to Lillian's cloud account, and someone trims the ends and neatens it up.
Okay.
It would be, whenever we have a coffee hour, it would be nice to kind of let it run, you know, the way I've seen other presentations. You know, whenever we can return to church. Just to, you know, jog people's memory. I mean, it's a gift.
Mm. There are also half a dozen pictures that I really wanted to put in, but didn't because my Google was misbehaving and kept moving things around. So when I got it this way, I left it this way and didn't put anything more in because I didn't want to be sabotaged at the last minute. So I do have a picture of some crew and stuff like that, but that's fine.
Well, it was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, I guess the curtain is closing.
Well,
And
thank
so
you.
Sandy, what is the next show? There are plans for a spring show, correct?
Ian says he'd like to do Sister Act, which I don't know at all, and start it in January and do it mid-spring. So we'll see. I don't know anything about that show, and I don't know any of the music from it, but I already have a collection of nuns outfits that might be usable. So we'll see.
And it won't be the first time that a show happened in the spring. There was one other year where we couldn't do it in the fall for, I don't remember the reason.
The reason was that Alpha and Harry went to Germany on a sabbatical to Heidelberg. So she was out of town. So we did it in the spring and then another one that same fall. But on my list, I gave them the year that it should have been, so it doesn't blip up. It was somewhere, I don't remember where it was. So there wasn't an extra show. It was just one that happened a little late.
Yeah,
It- it wa-
84,
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm?
83 and 84,
Mhm.
Okay,
yeah.
really early on.
Mhm.
Well, Jean, this is Miriam. Well, I think it's about time that we start wrapping up, but we want to make sure people know about our October presentation, which will be on October 14th. And Mark, are you doing that with one of your nature presentations?
Oh yeah, I think I am. I guess I need to figure out what I'm talking about.
There'll be some of Mark's photography, and you can use the same link that you used today to get into the program. Freddie, that's going to be good for all of our programs for as long as we're online this year.
That's
Right.
good.
And I just want to thank everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
you,
Sam.
Sandy.